Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Gravesham Borough Council's Planning and Business Development Cabinet Committee. As usual, I intend to go through some housekeeping matters. This meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and recorded. The recording will be uploaded to YouTube within 2 working days, where it can be accessed by everybody. Members, please use the microphone in front of you when talking. Ensure you turn your microphone off when you are finished speaking. Another member or officer will not be able to speak if your microphone is still on. Please note the Council's visual equipment may on some occasions focus on or near to the public gallery area. Therefore, those that in attendance meeting may be filmed and recorded. Attendance at the meeting signifies your agreement to this. If members of the public arrive and do not wish to be filmed or recorded, they need to inform a member of Council staff in attendance who will try to assist where reasonably possible. And of course, on hearing the fire alarm, we ask all attendees to immediately evacuate the building, and please evacuate via the nearest fire exits and make your way to Community Square outside the main reception doors. So we move on to the main part of the agenda then. So I've done the live stream announcement. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we have 2 apologies. One from Councillor David Beattie, who's been subbed by Councillor Derek Ashenden, and another one by Councillor Tony Rana, who's been subbed by Councillor Glendenning.
Thank you very much, Councillor Glendenning and Ashenden, for joining us this evening. Item 3 then is minutes of the meeting held on Monday, the 7th of July. Are they agreed, and can I sign them, please? Agreed? Yeah. Thank you very much. Item 4, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest of members? Anything that appears on the agenda, please? Nothing declared. As usual, we're taking into account everybody's declarations of interest that are on the website. Anybody? Item 5 is to consider any items of Part A of the agenda should be considered in private or Part B in public. Is there anything to move? It's worth noting probably at this point, as members will be aware via their emails, that item 8, the tree preservation orders and trees and conservation areas report, has been withdrawn and will be reported to the November committee. So we won't be carrying agenda item 8 at this meeting. So move then on.
I just asked why it's been withdrawn, please.
Your emails carry the reason, but I don't know if they missed. Okay, Mr. Garney, you want to?
Thank you, Chair. It's because the author of the work, myself, I was ill for a period of time, so I've not been able to complete it, and I subsequently was involved in the Northfleet Harbourside planning inquiry, so my time has been taken up with that, unfortunately, so apologies from me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It will go to the next committee, yeah. So we'll then move on to agenda item 6, which is business development, the overview of service area. Welcome Keith and Adrian to this cabinet committee. As of May, business development, economic development moved into this portfolio. So we're going to spend quite a lot of this particular meeting focusing on that new part of the portfolio. And there's 2 real big elements here. So we'll start off with business development and sort of overview. And I believe there's some presentations to be given. So Keith, Adrian, over to you, please. Thank you.
That's better. You can hear me now. Apologies. Just need to make sure I'm navigating this properly. Okay, so yeah, thank you for the opportunity to present on business development overview. So it's essentially the service that we provide in economic development. And that's my team of 1. So I'll run through some of the key sort of areas of work that we engage in and give you a flavour for that. So it's just reiterating who I am, and it's today's date. So starting with the Gravesham Business Network, I don't know how many people in the room would have had the opportunity to come along, but I'd like to stress that members of this committee, councillors, as well as local businesses and those considering setting up a business are very welcome to attend. This is quite an established group, really. So as the name suggests, it really is a networking group for people to come together, meet one another, collaborate, find business opportunities. It's for the council to share details of the work that we do, assistance that's available, whether it's financially or in terms of specific advice on particular themes, and is really, really good engagement opportunity. So we run the networking events quarterly, typically, and we take those around the borough to different venues. And typically we'd have 40 or 50 people that come along where we can, as I say, engage with them. We've had some, you can see the branding there, which speaks for itself, I guess, and the newsletter up on the top right-hand side. So as well as providing networking opportunities, we have a monthly newsletter as well, which covers some of those things I touched on, and some of the other events that other organisations host as well. So that was a reference to a Gifted Young Gravesham event that you can see on there on the top right. So it's a really important part of what we do. Talking and engaging with people is really, really key, as you can imagine. Another really important fixture of the annual calendar is the Gravesham Business Awards. It's been going for a number of years, started off as the Gravesham and Dartford Business Awards, and more recently has been just Gravesham. We're quite proud that we managed to make this happen. It relies upon sponsorship. It's not the Gravesham Borough Council Business Awards, it's very much the Gravesham Business Awards. So we've got a number of sponsors you can see at the bottom there. Obviously ourselves, Barnes Rofe Accountants, Gullen Solicitors, University of Greenwich, which actually was quite a coup because they were previously supporting Medway, which obviously is a bigger area, but they were attracted to come and work with us, which we were really pleased with. Though of course they have a presence across that whole North Kent area. So our next awards take place on the evening in November. We have an application deadline which is passed at the end of July. There are a number of categories that we seek to involve as many as possible. Sometimes with business awards, there's a perception that it's just the bigger businesses, but this is for everybody from the micros, the community businesses, the family owned, the rural area. You can see we had some new categories this year. So environmental sustainability, cyber resilience, which of course is increasingly important. And in looking to expand the categories, it was also an aspect of wanting to recognise that, particularly post-COVID, some businesses are growing effectively, some not so well, but actually there's an awful lot of good work that goes on that needs recognition. And what we're trying to do is find an inclusive way of really celebrating success. And I think the picture speaks volumes. Actually, it's a really good event at the Inn on the Lake, and we're looking forward to this year's event. So anybody that you're aware of in your communities, whether they're working out of a bedroom or whether they're running something out of substantial premises, we'd really encourage them to come forward in future years and make themselves known. And hopefully they'll be shortlisted and go on to be a finalist at the evening itself. So moving on to something slightly different, part of the service that was touched on so far is very much around engagement and celebration. And then other aspects of our work are much more about the, I hate to use the word in a way because it's overused, but the strategic nature of economic development, business development in the borough. So actually, if we're going to have a successful local economy, what are the ingredients we need? And one of those is to have the right land and premises availability. Again, whether that's for a micro business working out of their bedroom or coming out into a shared space or a small office, equally larger land-hungry uses, the sort of industrial uses we've got in the borough, for example, and everything in between. So we've had a big exercise in recent months that we've called a call for employment sites, which, as the name suggests, is us going out there to the market, whether that's landowners, current operators of space, businesses themselves, to understand what's required in terms of sites. So that could be industrial, warehousing, offices, micro business space, R&D, whatever category it fits into, and increasingly much more flexible options, because as in most walks of life, as we know, things are becoming smaller, nimbler, flexible. So actually, rather than sticking just to the sort of traditional use classes and things from a planning perspective, it's about having a more responsive understanding of what's really required to unlock economic growth through having the right accommodation options. So we did a lot of work around that, and just the images there are intended, but they were taken from the campaign that we did when we were seeking that interest around sites. And really what we're trying to communicate is just the breadth of different types of business that we have in the borough, but also what we might aspire to and what's sort of bubbling up. So it was really an inclusive, holistic view. This exemplifies another part of the campaign, which is a slightly different type of industrial or clean use, but also regeneration sites. You can see the bottom left there where you've got a yard space essentially. It's looking at those sorts of assets as well that could be brought back into use. So that's just, again, communicating the breadth of what we're looking to do. So moving on to skills. So we've talked about engagement with businesses and understanding their needs. We've talked about land and premises. Another area that's really key as an ingredient for any local economy, quite obviously, is having the talent pool, the workforce skills availability. So one of the sort of key projects that we've got at the moment in this space is what we're calling industrial group training. So, I mean, you can read what's on the slide, but what this boils down to, it's a very simple proposition. It's not new, but it's getting together groups of businesses with common training requirements, particularly around technical skills areas in the sectors, broadly speaking, of construction, engineering and advanced manufacturing, but also conventional manufacturing, that the businesses we've got in the area, some are in the advanced space, some are doing conventional manufacturing. Increasingly, the skill sets are shared, whether it's the aptitudes that people need to come in as a youngster and develop a skill set in a technical area, or whether there's a particular technology that goes across from a manufactured building, for example, into a more traditional engineering space. But we all know that there's a shortage of skills pretty much wherever you are, outside of Gravesham. And actually, if we can find a point of difference where we've stimulated new training options for not just younger people, but people retraining or people within the workforce that need to upskill, embrace new technology, then we'll have an edge. So the simplicity of it is getting groups of employers together, because typically you might have a company employing 10, 20, maybe 30 people. They don't very often take on an apprentice or a new member of staff. When they do, they can't find the training provision because it's not in the local area already. It's difficult to attract it. So the proposition is, let's get groups of employers together with common training requirements, bundle up their training needs into one, sort of one coordinated bundle of requirements, and then attract the training provision off the back of it. So if we can meet the minimum number of apprentices that are required, for example, and I talk a lot about apprentices, but it's not just apprentices, it's HE qualifications, it's equivalent qualifications as well. But I think apprenticeships is quite a nice, neat way of galvanising attention. But if you're able to meet those minimum numbers to run a course, but also you're able to pick and choose what a firm is able to fulfil in terms of the curriculum, because often the curriculum for a particular discipline can be quite broad, but small businesses specialise, don't they? So actually meeting the training requirements of a very broad qualification is difficult unless you do it together. So I think that kind of summarises what this is about. It's people coming together and collaborating to meet economies of scale and do things together, but in a commercial way. So very quickly, to give you a sense of where we are with that, we've done an awful lot of work really over the last couple of years. It boils down to some work that allows us to gain the attention of some of the strategic skills bodies, the colleges, Skills England, regional bodies, to make sure that we're galvanising all the resource that's out there, as well as talking to local firms about what they need. So we've done a market assessment which says what's the supply of training availability, what's required across these industries, what do the sectors look like. We've then looked at a feasibility report. We've completed one for what a group training association might look like. And then what we're moving on to now is one-to-one conversations with employers and others to develop a specific business plan for a particular entity, a group training organisation, with employer contributions, because it's really key that it's driven by employers. And then there's a link to a potential new skills hub as well, which is probably a topic for another day, but that's more around Lower Thames Crossing. And the intention is to set up that entity, if we can, by the end of the year. But these things take a bit of time, so there's going to be a bit of flexibility on that, I think. Final project to highlight is Growing Gravesham. It's a mentoring and micro grant scheme So the proposition with this one is if you're a micro business, or you're somebody who's thinking of setting up a business, perhaps you're trying to generate a second income from your bedroom, where do you go just to get some hands-on support? And what we've done in the past is we've run lots of workshops, which usually are at inconvenient times or inflexible times, and they're a one hit. So what we've done with Growing Gravesham is we've worked with an organisation that spent 40 years developing mentors, people who've been there, done it, got the T-shirt in business, and can talk with some assurance. So what we're offering to local people, whether they're running a business in Gravesham or they live in Gravesham, is the opportunity to be matched with a relevant mentor who can really sit alongside them and be a port of call for anything from the practical through to the more strategic or marketing or finance, whatever it is, but it's very much shaped to the individual. And then to help things along a bit, as you can see there's some statistics about some of the grants that have been made available. It's a small sum of money, but if you're starting up, obviously £750 can make a difference in terms of being kitted out or have a little project that you can take forward. It's also worth just mentioning quickly that we're also not excluding businesses within their first 3 years of trading or thereabouts, because often people need to pivot and do something different. And actually, they're just as worthy, we think, of a helping hand and a small investment to help people to reignite what they're doing. And then just very quickly to finish, a few things there that we also do. The top one, we'll come on to talking about the strategy. I spend quite a lot of time doing one-to-one sort of business guidance and support, which can cover all sorts of things. But it's presenting somebody who'll come out and speak to businesses and have a dialogue and be visible and act as a point of reference within the council, which can be really helpful. We input to planning applications, whether it's some of the statistical work around it or comments on the suitability of particular applications. There's a lot of research that gets done in an ongoing way, certain amounts of CPD as well. We look to promote other council services because obviously a lot of those touch businesses, so we're a conduit for making people aware. And then we make contributions to other publications and strategies, particularly looking up to influence government or regional players or the county council or whoever it is we decided in our interest to influence. And then, of course, you might expect we do funding bids and partnership work with various organisations in skills, land and premises, business support spaces. So there's lots more I could have said, but hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour for the sorts of projects we do and the kind of day-to-day activity. But I'll be really interested to hear any questions you've got by way of clarification, suggestion or otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Keith, for the overview of the service. We're going to come on to the sort of strategy for economic development in a moment. If there's anything any questions on the presentation or any points of the service as a whole, then this is the moment. I saw Councillor Pearson first. Anyone else?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. It's a very good presentation, and I appreciate all what you're doing. My main concern is you had a picture up there of industrial sites, and I know these sites have to be filled somehow, but when you're encouraging different employment and different vacancies to go there, we need to take in consideration what sort of businesses are taking up these sites, because some of the sites are not suitable for our road infrastructure that we're putting on our roads. Because we've got sites, i.e. like the Neuralite and the Who Junction site. We've got a site down at Queen's Farm Lane, all in country lanes. I know these sites need to be filled, but we need to realise what we're putting on our roads, because the road infrastructure is not there for them. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it's a key issue, isn't it, really? It's about getting the right uses in the right places. We're hostage to fortune a little bit because we've got existing sites that are where they are, as it were. But I guess from a planning point of view, and we work with the planning team, our focus is always what's the most appropriate set of measures for a particular location. So, you know, if that site was come forward with proposals to improve things, then we would support it. Equally, if there were proposals to intensify the use, you know, we'd apply some reasonable tests of reasonableness, I suppose you would say, in terms of commenting. Is this something that should be, you know, encouraged and made more use of, or, you know, is the existing use appropriate as it is? It's very much a planning matter ultimately, but, you know, we would look to, with all this work, we're trying to find the right places for the right types of use, but increasingly, as we're all very aware of, it's very difficult to find accommodation for all manner of things that need to happen in a borough, whether it's, you know, employment uses, housing, energy projects, food security, all manner of other things. It all places a call on land, and I guess it's all a balance really. But I think what you should expect from us is reasonable comment. And what I would say is, I'm particularly interested if members know a site and, you know, would like some engagement from economic development for whatever reason, you know, we're here to be approached. So if that helps.
Thank you. I'm going to, Mr. Garner's indicated he might be able to help with your question as well. So I'll take that first, and I'll happily bring you back in, Les.
Thank you, Chair. It's probably helpful to give some context. There's some historic sites in the borough, like Neuralite, like Kew Junction, which benefit from, you know, existing permissions that have allowed those sites to be utilised by business premises, or there are sites such as the ones where a waste treatment facility is. That's governed by KCC and not this local authority. Therefore, we, for example, don't have controls over those. I think the key point Keith gave there was when there is a new application in where we can make changes or which is seeking new floor space, Keith has the opportunity to comment from an economic development perspective with regards to impacts such as the highway network, etc. And that's when the local highways authority and the strategic highways authority have to give their views, and they're considered by officers if the decision is being dealt with under delegated powers, or by planning committee in the round if the decision is being undertaken at that level. So it's not a case that just to give a degree of assurance that those factors aren't taken into account. They are taken into account, but we have to consider the context and the MPPF, etc., to make sure the correct decision is being made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are, and I understand what you have to do and what you have to go through, but it's increasingly our roads are getting chock-a-block with HGVs, all sorts of different types of vehicles, and people that live in these areas, their leisure time is going, like joggers, cyclists, dog walkers, horse riders. They're being put off because there's too much traffic going on our country lanes, which they used to enjoy many years ago.
Thank you for that. I think there's a couple of compounded issues there, and I think we are seeing an increase in traffic everywhere for everything. And I think that we've long suffered, I think, with public transport not being particularly good, so everyone has a need to access cars to get to various places these days, and until we invest quite heavily as a whole country in our public transport system and matter of convenience, it is not limited, though, Councillor Bearton, to the rural area. If I want to go and see my sister in Northfleet, if I wanted to travel by public transport, it will actually take me longer to get there by public transport than to walk it, and certainly, obviously, then longer than it would be to if I was to just walk it in a straight line. So we don't have a public transport system that meets those needs. But I think also the additional point is we're seeing additional pressures for sites that are currently constrained and have been constrained historically, and I think, without going into what Reg 19 and the local plan may contain, one of the things I probably can say is that there will be an infrastructure first requirement in there for whatever goes forward, because actually recognising that infrastructure is as important as the development is absolutely critical, and is supported by current government policies about how we make sure that a development is not seen in isolation. It's got to fit as part of a community. So I think while we can't alter the past, we can certainly influence the future. And I think your concerns are heard not just by yourself, but also other colleagues across the chamber have heard that we need to make sure that infrastructure isn't done in isolation. And it isn't just about whoever's developing, be it economic sites, be it leisure sites or housing sites. They're not just seen as, right, it's just this. It's got to be seen as part of the community package, and that includes for infrastructure, and that to me includes roads. So that will have to be taken in the round as part of the local plan, as part of any plan application. It's already part of supplementary planning guidance that's come to this committee for design for Gravesham, where infrastructure is important when considering design, and we hope to take that all the way through when it comes forward. So don't disagree. But we're going to have we have to do what comes forward rather than we can't retrospectively, which seems to be a word that's used quite a lot today in various press releases. We can't retrospectively make these changes and shouldn't impose things retrospectively, but that were done correctly at the time. But how can we make it better going forward? I would argue that makes sense. Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions on this presentation? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. We'll note that, if that's agreed with everybody, and we'll move then on to the next item, which is item 7, the Economic Development, Industrial Jobs and Skills Strategy, or Business Gravesham. Whatever we want to call it, as it comes forward. And colleagues, you'll be aware the usual thing for the strategies is when we start doing this, it comes as a presentation for general discussion before it's drawn up into a formal strategy. So this is that stage 1 of that strategy, and Keith's going to take us through the sort of draft principles now. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think to sum it up, really, we've got a number of terms there, but it's very much about inclusive growth. I think if I could use one term, that's the intention, really. It's obviously around local economy. So I'm just going to run through, I suppose it might be worth just starting with the context, really. We've obviously got a challenging national picture. We've also had some changes within Kent recently as well, which possibly impact the environment we're in. So a couple of organisations that were previously doing work around economic development in the visitor economy and more generally around investment have recently had to close their doors. So I think it probably puts more focus on what we're able to do locally, really, which is where strategies like this come in. Very much draws inspiration from the corporate plan, as you'd expect, and work that's been done really through strategic regeneration and other teams over the last couple of years. There was a big conversation that was had around regeneration, Gravesham 2040, and what we're trying to do really is have some golden threads that go from all of that work and that public consultation and end up reflected in these service-specific strategies. So I'm not going to attempt to read out everything that's on that slide, but that's taken from some of the consultation material. Business Gravesham is the theme, and there's an emerging vision that we've got there. The intention today really is to share this with you so that in these early stages, there really is the opportunity to influence what's important and shape the strategy that comes out at the other end, really. So it's probably worth just touching on some of those key themes to exemplify a balanced and mixed economy. That really fits with some of the things I was saying earlier. It speaks for itself, I think, in terms of having a variety of different sectors that we seek to cultivate and to understand what we've already got, really, and how we can make Gravesham a place that is a go-to place to do business and grow a business. We've also got a focus on workforce fit for the future, which comes very much back to the skills piece. And then the bottom point around seeking additional powers and resources from government is having one eye always on what is it that we would like to unlock opportunities that we can't currently within our own resources, or by being intelligent about the way that we promote the borough and look to incentivise the sort of investment that delivers the plans that we've got. So it's just having that one eye on what does the community need and one eye on what can we do to influence others to unlock sort of a further opportunity. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the Gravesham Business Network because I touched on it in the previous presentation. It's probably worth just saying that we've put quite a lot of effort, or I've put quite a lot of effort into growing this over the last 5 years, really. So we started, as the slide suggests, with precisely 246 members, by which I mean newsletter subscribers who come along to the networking, and now we're up to 620. So those businesses, when you look at it, a lot of them are drawn from Gravesham, but there's also interest from neighbouring boroughs, which we encourage. We could sort of say, well, no, we're drawing up the drawbridge, and this is just for Gravesham businesses. But of course, as members will appreciate, we want people to come here and do business and take an interest in what there is on offer. So we look to run the network in that way, and it's growing successfully. And I think certainly the Federation of Small Businesses and the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce, they don't really do a great deal in our area because they feel that this networking fulfills a lot of the need. And you could say we're squeezing out what they're doing, but actually we all work together and it adds more. We're starting to see new networks coming out of the woodwork as well, which is a really good, vibrant sign to have other people wanting to run business networking. It just shows you that there is a real appetite, and I think it reflects the relative buoyancy of our micro business economy. And the number of business startups in the area has grown quite encouragingly. And that's perhaps something you don't see because it doesn't have the same spatial impact. You don't see buildings going up with it. But actually, what the business network exemplifies is that thriving micro business community. So it's a really important part of any strategy. So I'm just going to take some of those themes, and I'm not going to talk about every bullet point here, but try and give you a bit of a flavour of what's important around some of those key principles. So taking a balanced and mixed economy, which is borough-wide first. This is very much looking at emerging sectors, those that whether it's creative or leisure, for example, that where there's opportunity that's bubbling up, it's catering for those and being mindful of the opportunities there, but also acknowledging that we've got an awful lot of employment in the area within established industries, and what do they need to modernise and maintain themselves in the borough as well. So that we've got a real mix of employment opportunities for different people of different backgrounds, different skill sets, entry-level opportunities, more professional opportunities, perhaps as time goes on. And so it's really just that focus on the roundedness of the economy, but also that second point about borough-wide. There's not a lot of point focusing on just rural, just urban. We need to understand what the opportunities are in those different locations. Economies are becoming more and more local. People's mobility, perhaps is becoming, more limited. So actually, what's really important is that we take opportunities to create appropriate employment within a whole range of areas within the borough, so that everybody sat around this table has a community that's represented within this plan. So moving on, these all interrelate, of course, but second theme is a welcome place to start and maintain a business. The business network, I think you'll understand how that does some of that. It's just a principle of being open for business, being clear that we have a strategy for bringing business into the area that people can engage with. That builds confidence. Certain amount of it relates to brand, and there's a lot of work that's being done actually through strategic regeneration and other routes within the council around positioning the borough in terms of what that looks like and the sorts of industries that we're working with. This is an overview really of some of that wider work. Clearly, the local plan is important as well. We've talked about the call for sites and different areas for economic development, partnership. Again, there's a number of agencies that actually do overlap with our work. And then once again, just that point about having a mix of different types of business activity. So support for local smaller enterprises as well as new and emerging. I think I've exemplified that already, how important that is. One of the key pieces of work that we've got at the moment is to get a borough-wide business database in place. So we know who's engaged with us through the business network, but of course it's really helpful to understand the very specific business demography. So what business have we got doing what in which areas. Now, it doesn't mean to say they're talking to us, of course. It allows us to analyse, and you can analyse till the cows come home. But, of course, what we're in the business of doing with a small team is the doing bit, not the analysing bit. But actually having that intelligence in place, which we're looking at procuring, so that will be available quite soon. That will give us an idea of what the businesses are, what sector are they in, how big are they, what's their turnover, do they employ people. It will also look at their growth trajectory. There's an awful lot of data that can be, if you like, scraped from the banking world particularly, but other online sources. Of course, it's all anonymised. The data privacy is really important, of course. But actually, there's an awful lot of rich data that can be drawn into these systems. And what I'm hoping is that we can also purchase a tool that gives us what's called a CRM tool. So in short, where we've got a business record within the database, we can actually associate with that conversations that we've had with them, or rudimentary information, whether they've come to a business network event and so on and so forth. And it just helps us to build that relationship, and over time adds to these strategies and particular projects, because we've got greater insight. So that's probably the most important thing to emphasise there. So a local workforce fit for the future. I've talked about group training, which is in one of the white circles. I've also talked about apprenticeships before. I think, again, it's just worth emphasising that one of the statistics that came out of the market research that was done for the industry group training was actually we don't have a particularly high rate of apprenticeship provision within the area. So a fairly simple objective would be to increase that. And I think most people accept that however you do that, there are particular schemes, different types of apprenticeships. The government are talking about shorter apprenticeships. There's a change to the levy on employers, which will change the way that employers use a levy. Some have been using it more to upskill existing staff than to bring, let's say, new starts or youngsters into the business. But broadly speaking, the ability to have a focused effort on building competence, so that people aren't just gaining qualifications that meet somebody else's need, but actually give them the skills to actually take up gainful, well-paid employment, is a really important objective around workforce. So that's very much a focus. And as well as the group training work, as well as the prospect of a skills hub, we've also been involved in a successful bid that the college put to national government, which means they're one of 10 technical excellence colleges for construction nationally. They actually have to deliver a regional offer, i.e. they need to deliver a service well beyond Gravesham's borders. But because of the partnership that we've had with them and the express support that we've given them, and the kind of context that we've built through all of the partnership work that we've done, that will bring in really significant revenue money, which is really important, because as I know some members here will tell me and have done in the past, actually it's the ability to employ qualified staff in colleges and training providers, and to actually populate the buildings that we already have very often in the training field, that actually makes a difference. So that's just to give you a slightly broader flavour of the sorts of things that are being drawn into this strategy around workforce. Emerging priority activities. I've touched on a number of these. So skills plans I've talked about at length. Employment space similarly. Sector plans is there with a question mark. This is not something we're launching into, but you can appreciate that if we want to attract a broad range of different industries, as we already do, and other teams I've mentioned too there, arts and culture and the visitor economy service traditionally, these activities also relate to how we make ourselves attractive for the creative sector, obviously the visitor economy. So this is very much a reflection of the fact that we have to work with partners, we have to work with other teams within the council to drive some of that delivery. But I will pick up on the bottom left corner around affordable workspace, and I do stress affordable, because there's an awful lot of workspace which is anything but affordable, not just in Gravesham. In fact, we're probably more affordable than many, but actually a bit like the housing sector, oh, beg your pardon, some of the values are really increasing, which is putting businesses under stress. So one of the projects that, again, is probably for another day, but is something that's current, is providing new workspace for micro businesses, social enterprises and the third sector, so that we can really nurture new businesses in the borough and provide something unique. It's a long time coming, but this is probably one of the most important slides, I guess. And it's very much a reflection of how early our thinking is. So I think even our chair had this sort of thrust upon him at the 11th hour. So I'll take a bit of responsibility for what's here. And what it's describing, or attempting to describe, is a number of ambitions, I suppose, some of which probably fairly obvious. We're here to talk about the local economy. And I'll put a reminder up of some of the key activities in the white blobs, if I can put it that way. And then you've got those 6 ambitions, if you like, that are reflected in the middle. So I've summarised those as, well, the value of the economy. This is the markers at the top in grey. New jobs. What would a local economy that's more successful look like? What it would, be more valuable? It would have new jobs. It would have the right space, i.e. land and premises. It would have apprentices. It would have local jobs, and we'd be helping people to access work. And we think that's a fairly holistic approach. So, I mean, this is an area where really we're looking for feedback from members of the committee, really, as to whether this feels, sensible and holistic. So, grow the Gravesham economy, prioritise the creation of high quality jobs in key sectors, and hopefully those are recognisable. Number 3, increase the borough's total stock of employment floor space. If we can't accommodate an economy, then we can't have a more successful one. Number 4, increase apprenticeship starts. Well, as I've said, similar vocational qualifications, because we're not obsessed with apprenticeships per se. Number 5, I think probably this is something we've touched on at committee before, but you can have a blizzard of statistics around any subject these days. And I think increasingly people take notes less and less. But this is a really simple one, jobs density. It sounds a bit mercurial, but what it really is the amount of jobs that are available per head of the working age population. So do we have a lot of jobs for everybody who theoretically, is looking to be in work? Obviously, we know some people don't because they're carers or students or whatever. And the job density figure that we have in Gravesham is notably poorer than most other parts of the county. So in simple terms, we've got a small local economy in terms of the amount of activity, the amount of jobs. So actually, if we were going to do something to boost the economy, we'd be looking to make inroads into that. So that seems an important one. And then finally, we've got economic activity rate, which is about the proportion of people of working age between those 2 age brackets, 18 and 66, that are in work. Now, it doesn't really tell the story of, I think, what central government have been driving since they came in, which is around connecting people to work. There are a number of different services to get Britain working, which are reflected in Kent and Medway, that we're looking to play our role in, because we have so many touch points as the council, don't we, through housing or other services with the community. And we want to make sure that where people are looking to work and there's new assistance to help them, and there really is a lot through new government programmes, that we're well placed to make sure our residents are getting support into work. So that's the 6th and final one. And that's it, you'll be pleased to say.
Thanks very much for that.
I'll leave those up.
No, thank you very much for that, Keith. Really appreciate it. Worth noting, the slides will come out. It was given as presentation, so if rather than scribbling down things, the slides will come out and comments can be submitted as well after this. This is an iterative process. This isn't it. This is, as we've done many times before in this committee, this is the first thoughts, and we will have plenty of time to enhance this and throw this about until we have something we're doing. But thank you very much for that, and it really is a good start for the debate. Open it up to the floor, please. Councillor Lutyens first, please.
Cool, thank you. It's a really good presentation, by the way. I just wanted to go back and explore some of the earlier things about a nighttime economy, because I think there's I say this is, I guess, slight conflicts in my day job, but spend a lot of time with people who talk a lot about economic development being kind of like the catalyst being the nighttime economy, the music, the culture, and those sort of things. But I think obviously in Gravesham we don't really sort of trumpet much about it. So can you just explore some of the themes you talked about earlier in the presentation around sort of the culture of the nighttime economy and how we're going to use that as an economic driver, please?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it takes in a lot of our service areas. So we've obviously got the arts and culture team that have a programme of activity, some of which is nighttime economy focused. There's also changes that are sort of being made in the town centre around trying to bridge the gap between daytime, and nighttime economy, and making it easy for people to, I suppose, get into and access the town centre. It's an area that town centre management obviously take a lot of ownership of, but it's worth mentioning specifically the Nighttime Economy Fund, which is still available. So this is a fund to catalyse, to use your word really, ideas for how we might encourage people to engage in the nighttime economy, particularly that twilight economy between the daytime and the nighttime. So it's a sort of a challenge fund. So it's for businesses, social enterprises, other organisations that have got an idea and they need a little bit of funding to catalyse trying something new. Because let's face it, taking a risk at the moment is not what many people are or some people are in a position to do. So actually, that fund is something that's been supported through, obviously the council, and is available for ideas. I mean, I think there's, you can have a long conversation about it, but I think what we're trying to do, and I do speak slightly for other service areas here, but it's trying to find these opportunities to drip feed funding through central government programs into specific opportunities to give people the chance to try something different.
Thank you very much. It's worth noting, I think this has been already co-produced with businesses. This hasn't been done in isolation. I think with the economic development team, actually businesses have been involved with it. I just want to tease that part out, that this has already come. Some of those requests and some of these themes and ambitions are actually from businesses, not from Gravesham Borough Council. This is almost our response to those demands. Is that, have I got that right?
It is, yes. And it goes right back to corporate plan, really. So I think a lot of this was stimulated by those responses we had, which were actually very strong, I think.
Any other questions, Councillor Watkins?
Sorry, just one more. Unrelated. Can you talk about the green economy? We've heard a lot about it nationally as something that's going to be a potential sort of big growth area for sort of local communities as well as sort of like the bigger businesses. Is there much in the sort of that Gravesham's doing in that way to sort of harness some investment there?
That's a good question, isn't it? Because it's something. I've got a green screen as a backdrop to the presentation, haven't I? But it doesn't come out specifically other than some of the specific sort of sector areas. So one of the things that we've done, I mean, straightforwardly, when you look at the data, and although we're buying new business data, we do have data on the sector breakdown of the local economy, and it's available through ONS and other various sort of government statistics agencies. We don't have a strong concentration of businesses in what was termed the low carbon environmental goods and services sector. But of course, we all know that, well, it depends what you're talking about. Really, if you're looking to generate industry and jobs around, the green economy, I mean, that's a very broad classification. That's obviously one thing. But also what we're trying to do is draw out businesses that are actively addressing their environmental footprint, because we think, they deserve some recognition, but also, of course, if you're trying to build networks and understand what's possible, perhaps where there are clusters of things that are going on that we could encourage, we need to find the people that are doing it. So one of the categories with the business awards, which actually is a couple of years old, is environmental sustainability. But the way that we describe it is you don't have to be doing cutting edge environmental technology, but you may well have addressed your own environmental footprint as a business. Or you might have encouraged your customers and suppliers, for example, to do something. So we're trying to draw that out. I think there are a number of things that we talk about doing. So there's been, I mean, it's not for this committee, but there is obviously the action plan for the climate change strategy, and there are a lot of prospective actions in there. We do spend a lot of time drawing out sources of government and other support for businesses that are broadly speaking in that area, and making sure that whether it's finance or whether it's collaboration, they're there. We've spent quite a bit of time looking at the possibility of what we might do ourselves, working with Net Zero Go, for example. I don't think it's something I should go into at length here, but I mean, just to give you a flavour, it's a tool that's been used by Innovate UK, which is an innovation agency funded by government, just because it takes it to a slightly different sphere to what we're doing locally. And it's a collaboration tool insofar as it's driven by data itself. So if you're looking to invest in a renewable scheme, for example, a local renewable scheme, which might be good for businesses locally that have got mounting energy costs, for example. So wouldn't it be good to do something off grid that provided some sort of resilience locally and also created some economic activity and a point of difference as well for the local area? So if we were looking to do that, it's there's an awful lot of procurement, legal, technical considerations around it, depending on how you approach the projects. And this tool allows you to interrogate what other councils, what other public sector organisations are doing, and actually share in real time where people have got procurement templates or legal documents in place, legal agreements. So we're looking to keep one eye on all of those opportunities as well. It's difficult without serious investment to address some of these things, but of course it's a very, very broad subject in its own right. So I mean, I'm happy to pick up if there's something you think that we ought to be considering, then that's something we could touch on if you wish.
Thank you. Head of Planning wants to just add something now.
Thank you, Chair. It's worth just mentioning some examples off the back of what Keith has just said. In terms of businesses and dealing with their own footprint, obviously you have ourselves trying to address that via installation of solar panels and other measures in the council's housing stock, which addresses things to a certain degree and helps create jobs. There's also the point that there are businesses out there like some larger ones like Kimberly Clark's, as well as smaller ones, that are bringing in measures such as solar plans, etc., to address their footprint. But to give Kimberly Clark as an example, they're actually progressing a hydrogen plant within their site. That's effectively to reduce their reliance on gas as part of their production process. So there are projects out there in the borough which are seeking to improve the borough's green credentials overall. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think that's a very good point. I think we can. The point of this stage one of the strategy is we can feed in all these ideas, and I think when the slides come out and that, we can feed some of the stuff in before it comes to sort of the next committee. Are there any other comments anyone wants to add at this point? Councillor Glendenning, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one on the apprenticeship. I was really excited to see the apprenticeship stuff in here because as someone who started her career in the early days as an apprentice, I really think they're really valuable. I noticed the focus seems to be a lot on apprenticeship starts. Sometimes I think because when you're in your first year of an apprenticeship, you can be paid at quite a significantly lower level. Businesses can sometimes use them to kind of get short-term, cheap labour. Is there anything that we can do? And this might not be something that's within the council's control, but to kind of help businesses kind of develop their staff throughout, multiple levels of apprenticeships, and because that's how you build a skilled workforce. Just interested to hear.
Well, thank you. I think these are the detailed questions that are interesting, and I'm interested to know that's been your experience. It'd be good to talk about that. So, I mean, what I would say is, apprenticeships is obviously just one particular route. But there is a challenge. I mean, you started to say, I think, about starts is one thing. Actually, it's a number of people that finishes the problem. A lot of people just don't finish apprenticeships. Now, there's obviously an apprenticeship wage, and that's increasingly, a lot lower than the minimum wage. And, it's an expensive world, isn't it? People are looking quickly to, grow their income. And I guess if people don't believe they're getting high quality training, why hang around on an apprenticeship? If you don't think you're going to end up with something appreciably better at the end, when you could just go and earn another few pounds an hour. So my answer would be is that the whole focus really of what we're doing around the group training, for example, is that we want really high quality apprenticeships that people value. But we're also looking And as you say, it's not something the council can do. We can facilitate it, but if you've got a group of engaged employers, with a certain level of resource, and they would be the ones forming this entity, so it wouldn't be the council ultimately. We've talked about, just to give one example, that with the reservist scheme, military, there's obviously an engineering element to that, for example. Well, that actually pays a wage, so to speak, or I don't know how they term it, but you're paid obviously a retainer as a reservist. So actually, when you're as an employer or an authority promoting apprenticeships, someone coming onto one could actually be encouraged to take that opportunity up as well. It won't be for everybody, clearly, but it's one way of fulfilling a need while also giving people more experience, but also a top up to their wage. But I think the key to it is a sense, like it always has been, that the training has to be high quality and it's got to be delivered for the benefit of the individual and the firm. Whereas I think you could probably broadly say there's been too much training that's been done over the last 10 or 15, 20 years that's been more about the provider fulfilling a contractual requirement to whoever their paymaster is, and maybe the quality of the training wasn't really high enough up the agenda. So that will be higher if we've got employers that are leading it, because obviously they want competent staff at the end of the day. There's a long answer. Hopefully that's useful though.
Thank you. I think there's a national conversation I think needs to be had about apprenticeships, because I think we've seen it is a little bit potluck. Sometimes you get some really good employers that value their apprentices, they train them well, they support them well, and there's not just a good qualification come out of it. You can tell because they don't leave afterwards. And I'm very proud that the council is one of those good employers. I think our apprentices then, quite a lot of them stay here and they stay in the council, or they go to other local authorities, which is really good. But you raised, Keith, I think an important point about costs. If I did an apprenticeship, I was paying the same train travel to get to Maidstone as someone that was on for 5 times my salary. And I was paying peak train fares to get to the same location that someone else on the train was going, that was on, I can assure you, quite a lot more then. So how do we, if we want to encourage young people to take apprenticeships, we need to encourage and to travel for it, for example. I mean, to put themselves out there, we need to have a real good national conversation about how we support them in the whole, rather than just supporting this necessarily by employers as well. So maybe that's how do we help feed into those national messages as well, can feature in. Are there any other points or questions from everybody? This will come back to the committee soon, and we'll tell these slides will come out as part of the sort of follow up from the committee. But we'll move it forward from here if that's okay. Note that, and we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. But thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda then was the TBOs, which we deferred. It says item 9, corporate register of partnerships, page 7 to 20. Shannon, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out details of 2 partnerships that fall within the remit of this committee, the first being the Kent Downs National Landscape Partnership and the second being South Thames Gateway Building Control Partnership. Appendix 1 of the report sets out the summary of the partnership and the shared working arrangements. Happy to go through it page by page, Chair, or if members have any queries, happy to answer those. Thank you, Chair.
You should always assume members have read their papers. So are there any questions on the whole? I'm going to start off with one, and there's 2 planning ones in here, but this is planning and business development. So are there any business development partnerships that would normally be in the corporate register that should be at this committee?
We can double check, Chair, but I don't think there are.
Okay. So there's only 2. One, building control and a landscape partnership. It just seems very planning heavy. So it'd be good to check on the whole corporate register if that's the case. Can we just have an email assurance after this meeting, just to one way or another, as an action, please? Go on, Councillor Larkins, please, and then.
Just to follow up on the Chair's question, should there be some partnerships? I mean, is there a lack of people to partner with, or is it the fact that we have a different relationship than a sort of formal partnership?
I'll be quite honest, I don't know what the test or bar is, personally. So it's normally dealt with elsewhere, I'll be quite frank. But we'll find out.
Thank you, Chair. So the report actually sets out which partnerships, what the kind of the proviso is for partnerships falling within the corporate partnerships register, and I'll just quickly read it out. It's a partnership for which there is a council resource provision of £50,000 or greater, or one that is fundamental to the delivery of a corporate objective as established within the council's corporate plan, etc. I did mention this to the officer who drafted the report to just double check that there wasn't any business related partnerships. I wasn't advised of any, which is why there's none within this report. I'm sure if there were any, they would be in this report.
I think Councillor Larkin's point is one I've shared before. I think committee is long enough in the tooth for me. Although there are quite a lot, we work in partnership with quite a lot of people. It might not meet the high threshold, but I think we long ago discovered how we had a sort of other partnerships option where they might not be insignificant or £50,000 in terms of the definition there, but they're significant to the community or they're significant to us in other ways, and it's how we, I suppose, formally record that in a way that can highlight that. So I think maybe it's an action something we can take away from here, please, if that's okay.
Happy to do that, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there anything in the partnership arrangements or the ones that are here? The Kent Downs National Landscape Partnership, formerly known as the Kent Downs Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, or the South Thames Gateway Building Control Partnership. Any questions on those? No. Okay. But it's for information only, so we'll duly note that. If that's okay with everybody. And we'll then move on to the final substantive part, which is the corporate performance update, Q1 25-26, please.
Thank you, Chair. The performance report sets out the performance indicators applicable to this committee in relation to the Council's performance management framework, which builds on the Council's corporate plan. Appendix 1 sets a number of indicators. If members are happy to go through the appendix page by page, officers can answer any queries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As usual, we'll go through page by page, starting on page 26, PI 1314. And the context, is there anything there? Any questions on page 13 and 14? Oh, sorry, PI 1314, page 26. No. Move then on to page 27, which is PI 1516. Anything from there? Okay. Move on to page 28, PI 19 and 20. Applications. Shazad, please, you want.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to flag that whilst performance was quite high in Q1 for mine planning applications, and obviously we didn't have any major planning applications that were determined during the quarter for PI 19. The stat will fall within Q2 just for members' benefit at this moment in time. That's a result of sickness within the team and impacts as a result of Northley Hubside, so that would benefit if members were aware of that now. And in terms of planning applications for PI 20, just to give members some context, that relates to 23 applications, 13 of which were determined on time, and 10 which were the subject of an extension of time, as well as PI 21 that relates to 101 applications, 72 of which were determined on time, and 29 determined within the agreed extension of time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for the advance warning. You've been warned that PI 20 will fall, but for the reasons given, and that context will be reflected, I assume, in the Q2 report. If there's no questions on that, then the 29, which PI 21 that was already mentioned, but 22 is worth just highlighting. 22 is a brand new indicator because the previous indicator was, I suppose, formal planning enforcement actions, but that required it getting to an extensive, the end of the process, I suppose, whereas actually is now properly recording the total work that takes place and total enforcement actions taken, rather than just, I suppose, by the time it got to court, for want of a better term. So better and accurately reflects the planning enforcement actions taken vis-a-vis the caseload, which probably should also be in there in PA 22, just so members get a concept, if I will. Shazad, then I'll bring you, Gavin. That's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I'm more than happy to do that for future meetings. Thank you.
Councillor Watkinson, please.
Yeah, actually, I think you should probably ask my question. Just is 41 a function of 42 and it's really high, or is it a function of 410 and quite low? So I think, yeah, it's just to understand what's it a proportion of.
Just to give you some context, I don't have the figure in front of me, so I'm not going to say where it's a direct comparative, but on any given day, the officers are dealing with around 100 to 120 live cases.
I think as an action for the future, yeah, we'll make so in sort of the context section of the report, we'll make a sort of comparison to show that. I mean, those are actions that have effectively closed the case, or for want of a better term. So it's worth acknowledging that. But yeah, if there are sort of ongoing 100 and odd cases at any one particular time, then closing 40 in that quarter is important, and some of those are closed, with a minor action or warning, or sort of just informal action. But it's still we've had to do something in there, and this required a resource. So it's important. Are there any other points on that PI? No, I believe that is just one more then to go, which is page 30, which is PI 23 and 24. Are there any questions on that? Any point stories? Nope. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. This report for noting. So if that's noted, then we can move on then. Item 11 is AOB, which there isn't. 12 is exclusion. There's nothing in Part B. So that's the meeting closed 2036. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.